Better. Am I better?
Yeah, much a lot better. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
How are you?
good. Just um, life's changed a lot since we've last spoken.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
um, so fill me in. How's it been? And then I saw your email. You'll have to kind of reiterate to me, but we'll go over all that stuff.
Yeah, things have been good. I think, with Jack, we're not as stringent as using the collar inside the house as we are
Hmm.
outside. I mean,
Hmm.
it's always on when we go on walks or anywhere else. We always have the collar on, but once we get into the house, we're pretty lenient on taking it off. So we haven't really been working a lot on the door awareness situation, the
Hmm.
barking at the windows. So I think that's where we have a lot of work to do, but that's the onus is on us on that for not taking the initiative and doing it. So, because we're
Sure.
just so quick to remove the collar after we're inside from a walk. Most recently, he's been resource guarding
Uh-huh.
and not necessarily his own bed. What he's guarding is if so he's been around other dogs. He's always been around other dogs. He generally speaking has always gotten along with other dogs. And there's been 3 instances that we've noticed recently where he's laid on a blanket or on like a mat or like a rug on a carpet, and a dog will approach him and come near him after he's played with this dog all day long and they've gotten along, and he'll like growl or snap, not like bite but growl and like warn them as
Hmm.
if they come near him where he's laying. um, I don't know what that's all about, but it's happened 3 times on 3 different occasions, and all for the same reason. He was laying down and a dog came into his area where he was
Sure.
laying.
Okay.
And in only one instance, it was his actual bed. The other 2 instances was like a blanket that was on the floor. And then the other instance was just a random, like, small mat, like a small carpet
Hmm.
that was on the floor that he was laying on. So those are the 3 instances that happened. He hasn't bitten in those 3 instances. He just warned,
Sure.
but pretty aggressively warned. So, I mean, to a point where it's like, okay, I don't know what to do here.
Hmm.
I was doing some research and some reading, and I alluded to the point that maybe it's because we give him like a high value treat in his bed at home.
Hmm.
Like in his bed at home is where he gets raw bones.
Sure.
And like we lay a towel there, and that's where he gets his raw bones. But of course, I'm not the expert, so
Sure.
Google can only tell me so much. So,
Sure.
um, but that's kind of where our concern lies right now, and what we want to nip in the bud and kind of address as soon as possible, because I mean he's around dogs a lot,
Sure.
and he always has been, and it's never been an issue until recently.
Sure. Um, what was I going to say? Okay, so uh, on let's say on the towel or whatever, right? Prior to these 3 instances, has Jax ever been on a place area, very similar context with other dogs around, and no problem?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old is Jax now?
7.
7. Okay. And then when did the raw bones on the bed or whatever start? Was that a more recent thing, or is that something that's been happening throughout his life?
We did that more recently,
Okay,
where we laid a towel on his bed and we're like, okay, you can only have these here.
sure. So I think that makes sense. That prior to this, he was fine, and then you start this. I understand the towels to keep things clean, or putting it on his bed so he doesn't get it on the furniture, what have you. Um, but that makes sense to me. That could be a potential reason why he's guarding the bed,
Mhm.
okay, or the areas. Um, and the other thing would be his age. So, 7 to us doesn't seem that old, but for a dog, like he's already like kind of a little bit past middle aged. My
Yeah,
pit is about 8 years old, and she's starting to white around the muzzle and all that stuff. I don't like it,
I
but
don't either. I know he's pretty gray. Yeah.
yeah. So And same thing for my Chihuahua. They're the same age, and he's a black-faced Chihuahua, so it's very evident. He's getting white around his muzzle, and he's 8 years old. And in the past 6 months to about a year, he started, when he sleeps in the bed with me, they both do. And if my pit moves, he'll growl and like snap at her, right? Which he's never done in the past, 7.5 years that I had him until the past 6 months, right? So that I would credit or warrant towards the age. Not a big deal. As they get older, they get grumpier, so that's another potential thing. I'm more on the side of the bone, but it can also be the age, where he's just not as accepting. And this stuff happens it's like flipping a switch. It's like one day I'm cool with it, one day I'm like, nope, I'm a grumpy old man, and then respect my space. Okay.
Right.
So the good thing or the positive thing about resource guarding is that it's controlled context, really. Like you can foresee it happening. If you see Jax on his bed, you can predict if a dog's walking past him, he's probably going to have a problem with it, right? So that puts you a step ahead. So that's the good thing. You can also avoid it by, just removing, his bed or his blanket and stuff. The only concern would then be is if it transfers to like the couch, and then he's laying on the couch and then the dog walks by, there's the possibility that if it is tied to the bone, that since the bone there's no association with that to the couch, that maybe you don't see resource guarding, right? Mm-hmm. But it can also happen where the dog just generalizes and goes, I'm on a surface and I'm just going to guard this surface now, right?
And that's what I think it is, because he's like generalizing his, like he literally was sitting on a little rug in a kitchen, mm-hmm. and like a dog walked by him and he like warned her.
Sure.
It was like, it's not even like.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What was it?
What was the distance of that dog when they were walking past?
They were literally like she was coming near him. She wanted to play with him. They were playing like right before that, and he laid down on this like piece of rug, and then she came towards him and he like snipped at her.
The other 2 times when he snapped or growled, was it similar? Like, was there play before and then the behavior?
The first time there was no play before because it's my sister-in-law's dog. She's a very old dog. She doesn't want to play with Jack. Mm-hmm. And he was on like her blanket on the floor, and she just was walking by him. Like wasn't even like making contact with him, just was walking by him. Mm-hmm. And he snipped at her. And then the second time the dog was like on his bed basically, like trying to get to his toy. So it was like we were like, all right, you were pretty close.
Sure.
But the first time, no, the dog was like wanted nothing to do with him. Was just like walking by a good probably like foot away from him, but was walking towards the blanket.
Okay. So when it comes to addressing this type of resource guarding, is like we can't make Jax accept, or how do you say, willingly accept a dog moving into his personal space in that context. Okay, you can force it. Like you can collar him up, put him on his bed, and bring a dog on there, right? And you'll probably see Jax looking like really like crap, like what's going to happen because it's being forced. But it's really unrealistic, right? Because real life would be he's laying on his bed and a dog just nonchalantly walks by, right? They're very different pictures. So when it comes to resource guarding, it's either avoiding the problem or being prepared for it, or assuming that it's going to happen so that you can address it the moment you feel like there's a thought process. Okay, and I'm going to give you all of these answers because there is no concrete right answer. Okay, so one would be if we have dogs over, I would just assume, Jax is going to resource guard any kind of flat surface, and removing those things, right? And not allowing them, for instance, on the couch or whatever, because that would be the same thing. It is possible that he could just be laying down on the floor, nothing there, and be guarding his personal space, which I'll talk about, but that's, I want you to be aware of that even if you remove those things, there's still the potential that he will guard his personal space. Okay. But at
Mhm.
least you're removing that context of an actual object. The next thing would be you have them collared up whenever there's going to be dogs over, right?
Okay.
And you leave things as they are. Or you could do both. You could, remove everything and then you have the collar on them just in case if you see something off. Or you leave things as they are. And when Jax is laying down somewhere, I'm always aware of what like my dogs are doing and what's going on. So like if I'm watching TV and I know Jax is in the kitchen and then this dog hops off and walks past me towards the kitchen, I'm already looking, right? And I'm
Yeah.
observing that whole time, to see where's the trigger, like at what point does Jax become uncomfortable? What does that look like? So like he might, let's say, because I remember there was like when you walk in, there was like the stairs here, and then this was your living room, and then the little dining area, and then you had the counter, and then like the entrance to the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
So if I get up and I start watching the interaction and I see Jax in the corner of the kitchen, and as soon as the dog enters the kitchen, you see Jax perk up, that is already the thought process, right? Or it could be closer, but you're looking
Mhm.
for that first instance of like, of I call it concern in this in this context.
Yeah.
When really like maybe prior to this he wouldn't care, like he wouldn't bat an eye on it, he'd be in the kitchen or whatever laying down, the dog would pass and like he wouldn't change, right? So that
Yeah.
shift in position is already telling you that Jax is concerned, he's thinking about something, and maybe he's like, are you going to get close to me? He's already kind of scoping that out. Boom, right there, I'll remote him, and you don't have to be high, it could be whatever his normal obedience number is. And
Mhm.
ideally, you would see him either get up and walk away or lay back down and relax.
Mhm.
Okay. There's no right or wrong here. I would actually prefer if he got up and walked away. Okay. Because that's avoidance
Yeah.
behavior. So when we deal with aggressive responses or any kind of behavior that you're wanting to stop, you want to see avoidance. Okay.
Okay.
The reason is, like uh, I mentioned earlier, we can't make Jax like accept and be comfortable and like a dog moving into his personal space, right? But we don't want him going into conflict. So the other option is, well, if you don't like it or you don't like the situation and I don't want you to become aggressive, it's either you accept it and just submit and allow the dog to do it, or you just leave the situation. Okay.
Mhm.
And leaving the situation for the dog is easier than forcing him to accept it. Okay. So
Right.
if he's stationary, you've corrected him, he's subdued, and the dog continues to go into his personal space, his stress levels are going to go up because he's going to go, there was concern, mom disagreed with it, I gave submission, so I'm more vulnerable, and you're still coming into my space, that I would anticipate most likely a bigger reaction.
Right.
Okay. So now we have a balance of things. So if I got him to not care, then it falls on you to address the dog to leave him his personal space alone. So then
Right.
Jack goes, oh, I can be in my bed and, mom disagrees with certain things, but when the stressor comes in, they will address it so I don't have to. You
Makes
see
sense.
that? So it's a balance, right? So I'm very fair about how I approach things with dogs because, it's like someone trying to force you to accept something that you don't like,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
nobody can make you do that. That's you. You have to make that decision of one day of like, you know what? I typically don't like this type of food, but I've decided I do like it, right? Same thing for the dog. You can't force them to like it. And then you might read stuff like about using positive reinforcement and using food to create a positive association and stuff. Typically what it does is just overstimulates, and the dogs really don't learn anything, and then you got two dogs sitting side by side wanting food, and they kind of forget about the whole thing anyways, because you remove them from the context. So I typically go with
Right.
either getting him to leave the situation, or if you, because he should not have concern with the dog just walking in the kitchen. There's plenty of space there, right? So
Right.
I would correct that, because that would be unreasonable concern. But then I would make sure to address the dog within a probably 4 to 6 foot distance of coming into Jax's space. You could probably close it even more, but the more you close it, the higher the chance of him becoming aggressive. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then what you may find is that over time, Jax will not care so much about the dog coming in, because he's going to just think, well, mom will take care of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I had a third, and then it slipped my mind. So we talked about removing everything. The next thing would be, you try to recreate things to be as realistic as possible. And this is where there's the most risk. Okay. No collar, no e-collar, no removal of the beds and stuff. You leave life how it is.
Okay.
And you go back to the bunker, right? So then it's the same concept, but with the collar, there's the potential that Jax may not even display certain things, right? He may not even lift his head, because he already knows the power of the collar. So then if I remove it, it allows Jax to be more normal. And you have your bonkers ready, and it's the same context in the sense that, like, you're watching whenever the dog goes over, and the moment you see the thought process, you use that tool instead. So he doesn't become dependent on the collar. But since it, depending on his dislike of the kind of the coming into his personal space, it might be worth the bonker hit. Like, he might not even care about it, because of the situation. Like, that to him is more important than the bunker, right? I don't know. I think from what I remember, what you guys told me, that he would, like, with the window stuff, like, he had one on the coffee table, I think it was, and then, like, you would pick it up or something, and, like, he would, like, cut it out. That I would think he would be receptive to it. But then if things go south, now you don't have anything to, if it should escalate, because I'm always thinking worst case scenario, right? That a towel isn't going to stop a full-on, dog fight. Is how I think on that sense, right? So those are the 3 approaches, and it's really just figuring out what works best for you and what you're most comfortable and confident with using. And I would do this, like, let's say you go the e-collar route, and maybe he's more submissive, and you don't see these behaviors, then at the end, like, the worst thing that can happen is whenever a dog comes over, he's just got his collar on.
Yeah. Now, with the collar, I mean, he's super timid when we put it on him. He's just, like, immediately just, like, cowers. He is, like, he's almost, like, afraid, but he's just timid when we put the collar on him. Is it okay for him to play with other dogs with the collar on, or does that, like?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though he's timid, like, will he want to play, or is he going to be, like, more uninterested because of it? I mean, we haven't had that situation. We haven't tried it out.
Mm-hmm. It's possible. Okay. So with the collar, a lot of people tend to use it when they need it. So, like, when the dog's already being bad, or they're walking on a leash and they know a good heel, but they let the dog go ahead a bit because it's not pulling anymore. And then they wait for the dog to be reactive, and then they're using it, right? So, so for me, in my opinion, I always tell everybody, if you do it that way, you keep your dog stuck in this little bubble, right? Because now it's just always a negative experience when this collar is on. When I want it to be full circle, I want it to be, yes, it's discipline, but it means, we go to a walk to the park, and it means you play with your dog friends, and it means, we're going out to the picnic, and we're going to the beach, and we're going for a car ride, and we're going to PetSmart, right? So the dog doesn't think like it's only when, like, it's a disciplinary measure. It's like, it's just a part of life. It's always there, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's always there. But then the dog goes, but I also have really good experiences. And people tend to have, how would you say, more positive time with their dogs, because a correction is a split second, right?
Yeah.
So if you take your dog to the park for an hour and he gets corrected 5 times, those 5 corrections only lasted 5 seconds. So five
Right.
seconds out of an hour, right? You have more positive countering the negative, but if you don't do enough of that exposure, it's you get the timidness, right? Which can affect whether or not he wants to engage with a dog, because he may think, well, I don't want to get in trouble. Which is why
Right.
you don't have to worry about it in terms of the application in the home. I don't want you to think 24/7. Okay. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
Jax is that kind of dog. Most of my client base is the dog is collared up when they go out for their walks and they do anything where they know they need the control outside the home. And
Mm-hmm.
in most cases in the home, like when a guest comes over, they might have the dog collared up for like the first 10 minutes and then they remove it, just to like
Yeah.
dial them down. And then the dog, how would you say, kind of like learns the game. He goes, oh, okay, as long as I behave myself, I respond to my commands, and I don't, become reactive, like nothing happens, and then they loosen up. They're not timid anymore, and they just live comfortably or as relaxed, right?
Yeah.
So with your use of the collar, like inside the home stuff, I'm not worried about. When you said like, we've been walking with it, we're sure that we have it on, that's all good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't worry about the inside the home stuff, because that's where you would use the bonker for.
Yeah.
Unless you feel that the collar, unless you, how would you say, unless that's easier for you, then that's not a problem either, right? I tell
Mm-hmm.
everybody, do what works best for you. Here are your options. There's no concrete answer for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does Jax like? So when you do your e-collar stuff, because I remember we did the down command, I remember we did heel, I remember we did the bonker stuff, and the reactivity and all that. What does his activity with the collar look like? And like on a weekly basis, like is it we take him for a total of 4 hours for walking, an hour of walking? What does that look
Mm-hmm.
like?
We go for like a mile walk at least once a day.
Okay.
So we do a mile walk, which is like 30 minutes or so,
Mm-hmm.
once a day.
Okay.
And he's collared up the whole time.
Does he get any freedom?
Like we give him the break, yeah.
And what
But
does
he
that
doesn't get any freedom.
Okay, so he's not like, so like the break to potty and like sniff a little bit and then back on the walk?
Yeah. One second, somebody's knocking
Sure.
on my door.
Sure.
Hi. 1 second. JP, somebody from AT&T is here. Can you go outside? Sorry.
No problem.
But yeah, he doesn't get any breaks. Like we're not giving him or he gets the breaks, but we're not giving him the freedom
Mm-hmm.
to like be free in the park or anything like that.
Sure. So I feel like it's most likely he associated just like strict military discipline, right?
Yeah.
That is there any reason why he doesn't get freedom? Like even if it just means like giving him a break and then walking for 15 minutes and just letting him just do his thing for 15 minutes.
No, there's no reason.
Okay. So in my book, because with Jax, we first were addressing reactivity, correct?
Mhm.
And how's that been?
It's been good.
So, if I get the control and the behavior where I want it,
Yeah.
then I can start bringing in the rewards, right? As a rule of thumb, I generally do 80% work to 20% play. So if you
Okay.
did a 30-minute walk, like what is that? Like 6 minutes would be of him just being Jax and like sniffing and stuff. If you're not comfortable with letting him go off leash or on a long leash, that's fine. But giving him like a chunk of time where it's just, hey, buddy, like here's your own time, right?
Yeah.
To help balance things out, because that would make sense why he's still timid, because he's not had that positive aspect of like, oh, like, you know, when I get the collar on, it's always just heel and sniff and pee and poop
Right.
and back home again, right? And I was this way when I
Yeah.
first started. I was very regimented, and then I noticed it with my own dogs. And then my mentor told me like, yeah, you're too strict. You have to give them their own time, and it'll help loosen them up a bit, so that when the collar is on, when dogs are present, he'd be more inclined to just be himself and actually engage in play.
Got it.
Did we talk about giving food or a treat when putting the collar on and removing it?
Yeah, I typically give him a treat. Oh, see, I guess that's bad. I guess I give him a treat when we remove it because I'm rewarding him for his walk, but
sure.
give a treat when it's good. I guess I never thought of that.
So what I would do is I usually do 2 or 3 high value treats only for the collar, so that's the only time he gets it. And when you bring it out, you know, I'll give him a treat and put on, give him a treat. And then when you come back for your walk, I grab it, give him a treat, and remove it, give him a treat, right? And then what you can even do is just randomly throughout the day, just pick up the collar, and when he looks at it, give him a treat, you know, give him a couple of them. So he doesn't always think when you pull it out, he's going to have to wear it. But then he starts thinking, oh, like when I see that, like good things happen. And the more frequently you do it, the faster a dog will typically get over things. And you can also even, you know, put it on him and not do anything with him for like 15 minutes and then remove it, give him a couple of treats, and then put it away. So he doesn't think that just because the collar's on that it's guaranteed discipline.
Got it.
Okay.
That's a good idea because I just feel like like you could tell that he knows it's like it's work time.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be in a house with another dog for a week and like 2 weeks.
Okay.
So over the course of the next 2 weeks, what are some things that we should be doing to, I don't want to say prevent the resource guarding, because obviously it sounds like it's a natural thing and we have to be in the moment to figure out if it's going to happen or not. But like, I guess, do you think that we should be working on more of the comfort level with the collar over the next 2 weeks, just so he's excited about it versus not being?
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks is a good amount of time, and especially if you do it like if you really just how do you say go at it multiple times a day, you'll get a faster turnaround time. That would be definitely, because if it's possible, it's not very common, but it's possible that if the dog has the collar on, that they'll be more and they're timid, they'll be more defensive about it, you know, about their personal space, because they're wanting just to avoid problems. So if he has the collar on, he's being timid and he's growling, he's really doing it because he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to act out to get in trouble, when technically the growling would be corrected. But the reason why he's growling is to tell the dog back off so you don't get me in trouble. Yeah. Because I actually have a dog, he's here today, and he's very similar. And, you know, he comes to my daycare, and this is like his 15th time here, and I trained him. And when I'm around and he's got the collar on, he's timid, right? And he doesn't want to play. He minds his own business. And then about around the 10th to 11th day in, he started to loosen up, but we kept pairing him with single dogs. And then finally he came around and was like, okay, like I can play and have my collar on and not worry about being in trouble, you know? So the food will definitely help, but don't be discouraged if you still see him looking timid, you know, during that time. That's why it's like a lot of this FYI stuff, because there's potentials that can happen, but you really won't know until you're in that setting. But I would do the food thing. I would give him more free time or reward time, putting on him randomly throughout the day and not doing anything with him. You don't even need to turn it on, for short, 15, 30-minute intervals or whatever. Or maybe put it on him, and then if he likes to play ball, or like if he has a favorite activity that you do with him, doing that activity, but doing no e-collar to kind of loosen him up and let him know, like, hey, buddy, you can be excited and have the collar on, like it's no big deal.
Yeah. Okay. And so your daycare, I mean, you're still in business and open right now. I mean, do you think it's a good idea, and maybe like, because obviously there are other dogs at a daycare, do you think that that would be a good route in terms of like training and resource guarding?
Um, he most likely wouldn't show resource guarding here because it's not his territory. Now, what
Right.
we could do is get him more comfortable with around dogs with the collar on, right? Like that's something, if you brought him here and we put him in with another dog to see how he does, and we see that he's timid, that we can work on.
Okay.
But the resource guarding, a lot of times when we do, like I had a dog that came here for a board and train a couple of months ago, and he bit
Mhm.
the owner pretty bad with resource guarding.
Mhm.
And we did like a week of training, and then I started the process of resource guarding, and I really had to force the issue to even get him to lift his lip,
Yeah.
because the owner was coddling him and like letting him do whatever he wanted, walking all over him and all that stuff. So there was no respect there.
Yeah.
So that's something we could definitely push it and then see what happens. But the only thing that I would teach him is really is avoidance. I mean, we can also just force him to just accept it. But it's going to be different in our setting than in the setting of this is my home, this is where I eat, this is where I live for the past X amount of
Yeah.
time. So.
So the resource guarding, the 2 out of the 3 times he was not at home.
Oh, okay. Where was it?
The first time was at my sister-in-law's house, which is that dog's house.
Sure.
And then the most recent time was at our friend's house, which is their dog's house. So it wasn't his space at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, we could test it. Whether or not he'll do it is up in the air. I had another dog that at the home hates me and can't stand dogs, and at daycare is perfectly fine. Like, no problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wish I could give you a
Funny how that
confirmation
works.
on that part. But yeah, it's something that we could push. If we don't see anything, we would let you know. The getting comfortable around dogs with a collar on is something that we could do.
Okay, got it. So I guess in the meantime, I should just be, or I guess when we're in the presence of another dog, is to really just keep an eye on things and to try to address the reaction before it happens.
Yeah. So like, let's say it's going to be a more relaxed setting where you don't want to have to worry about Jax and his behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you feel like you're going to be too distracted to really keep that level of awareness, what I suggest is that you do stationary control with him, or just not allow him to those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the same time, how do you say, like, you guys aren't dog trainers, right? And you're going to be having a conversation, and you're going to like you might forget.
Yeah.
And me, I'm hyper aware when it comes to dogs, that even when I'm training or even if I'm having a conversation, like I'm aware of what's going on. So I would do plan for that. Like, if you're going into a like dinner or whatever, and you're like, yeah, we're going to be really distracted, then I would take Jax and like down him either at my feet or like, somewhere where I can keep an eye on him to make things easier. And then when it's going to be not so, how do you say, distracting, and you can keep an eye on them, then you can let them be more loose. Or if it just makes your life easier, if you can't keep an eye on them, just remove them from the setting. And then when you can keep an eye on them, you bring them back in.
Got it. And if he does do anything, and if he does react, what should our reaction be? I think the last time our reaction was like really angry. We like grabbed him by his collar or like by his like neck and we like disciplined him. Like, is that the correct reaction to have, or should there be a different route if it does happen?
There should never be an over exaggeration or like too much energy. So like when I correct the dog, I'm always calm. Like the way like my energy here with you is my energy when I correct the dog. And this includes very aggressive dogs. You know, people tend to think if the more aggressive the dog is, the more aggressive you have to be. And I go, no, like I'm always this energy. So if you have the collar on, you know, I jump to the remote and then I'm ready to jack it up if needed, right? It goes to 127. If I'm using the bonker, that's why I'm looking for that. You know, ideally, you want to get it before the 10 behavior, the worst that it is.
Right.
People tend to wait for that moment. They wait for the dog's already growling or the dog's already snapping, and I go, no. You know, seconds before, the dog lifted its ears and looked at the dog. Like that was the sign of, I don't like you moving towards me. I correct right there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
If things go south, I don't yell. I just go in. You have to be very careful because when a dog, if they're actively engaged with each other, and you just reach in, more often than not, you're going to get bit.
Right.
So if that's if that happens, then I go for the hind legs. And I pick up the hind legs of whoever the aggressor was. So if Jack starts it, I would pick up his legs. If it's the other dog that becomes aggressive, then I pick up their legs. But if one person grabs one dog and the other person grabs the other dog, and they're latched on, like I don't pull them apart. Okay. Because when you try to pull them apart, they let go and grab harder, and then you start to rip muscle, and then there's multiple bites. Typically, it looks worse than what it is until people interfere, because they typically go about it the wrong way. So I always pick up the hind legs. That usually throws them off, because then they're like, "What the hell's going on?" Then I can then remove them from the situation, and if it's just me, I can use my foot to keep the other dog back. So if there's more than one person, each person grabs a dog from the hind legs. If they're latched on, then one person, if there's a third person, can come in, and then I pull up on their collars, just straight up, and I hold it, and then you can even twist it to put pressure on the throat to choke them out, to get them to release without doing more damage.
Okay. Well, wow. I really hope it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy, you know. It's like I'd rather you have the information and not need it.
Yeah.
Because I've had several clients, you know, they get stuck in the moment, they panic, they jump in, and I had one gentleman that the dog literally just climbed up his arm and bit him like 6 times.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was bad. So, but you know, he panicked. So that's how I go about it. I never try to remove them from each other. If you can't do that, I'll kick the aggressing dog in the stomach and the hindquarters to knock the wind out of them until I can get them to run off, and then address the other dog. But the moment you go near the mouths is when you're more likely to get bit.
Okay.
Welcome to the
A lot
dog
of information.
Yeah.
I know. This is like new stuff, and then we're like, okay. And I was reading too, like, could be his age, it could be the high value treat that he got in his bed. So it's like, and like to your point, it could be a combination of both. So I guess the good thing is that we've only seen warnings from him. Like, he hasn't bit any of the dogs that he's like. It's just literally been warnings.
Yeah. So there's a few positive. There's warnings. It's context based, right? So I just make the assumption of, if I see the dog going towards them, I'm gonna see what's going on. And if you find yourself kind of falling back on kind of like faith that he'll be a good dog, you know, I tell people, ignore that, watch, because a lot of times
Okay.
they'll go like, well, he did so well. Like, when we put the collar on, we had 30 instances of interacting with the dog and no issue. And then the 31st, there was an issue because, and
Yeah.
coincidentally, they dialed back or whatever. And I go, yeah, it's because there was complacency, and it always comes down to the owner being proactive about, no, I'm going to make sure that you don't do anything and that you behave yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think I have what I need. Maybe we can reconnect after we get back from this week with this dog in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Just to kind of share like behaviors with you and whatnot. And then I strongly might consider honestly like daycare for a week or boarding for a week.
Sure. Just let us know. We're here. And then if you see anything and you're able to, I always recommend that people, especially now with the social distancing stuff, is record.
Mm-hmm.
So that's way, if they see, because you might see something where you're not sure, so if you
Yeah.
record it and you send it to me, I can watch it and tell you like I'm not worried about it, or that's something you need to keep an eye out for.
Okay.
So and that goes to anything that you see coming from Jack. So you have any questions about, always feel free to record it. You can shoot me an email and I'll review it and then email you back and let you know. And then in a couple of weeks after this whole thing happens with the dog, we can do a follow-up. And then I wish there was it's either you have him under control, you remove him completely, or you go as life is, and then you're just ready for when the moment happens. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong. Okay. I tell people, go with what you're comfortable with, go with what you're confident with, in order to get like the best outcome.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
No, this was great. And I know this was recorded. Is it possible to get a copy of this sent to us?
Yeah, sure. I upload it and I'll just send it to you.
Sweet. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna just share it with my husband since he wasn't able to attend.
No, for sure. And then I've been posting other videos too with like we've been recording everything now because since I'm not physically handling the dogs anymore, it's all verbal instruction. That people can go back to and review because it's a lot of information. But then also other dog owners who maybe aren't getting the same results, so they don't know what they're looking for, can watch another video and go like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be like. And then in turn, it gives them information. So.
Okay, cool. That's great.
So I'll send that to you. And if you need anything else, feel free to reach out, okay?
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.